There we go. So I want to thank everybody for showing up. This is our first of the year. We have a lot of webinars lined up. We already have 7 or 8 lined up in the first 6 months. We do have a bonus one that just slid in under the radar that's going next week, next Thursday, about the excise tax credit the breweries can use. So come back and join us again next week for that. For those that have joined after I mentioned it, in 2 weeks or a week and a half, we will have our first visit up to Tallahassee for our a Capital Days event. We'll have a member social at Deep on that Tuesday night. Josh is working to put together a schedule for meeting with people of import up there. So if you can join us, please do. I will be posting a link for a special room rate in Tallahassee for those nights, and then we're doing it again in March. Josh can remind me of the dates. I don't have my calendar.
It's the week of the 14th.
Week of the 14th. Yep. And again, Tuesday and Wednesday. There'll be some gathering. There'll be some networking, and there'll also be some talking to representatives and that sort of thing. So the more people that can join us, the better. So please, if you can, we'd love to have you join us up there. Also, Brooke put out and I will reiterate it. As we move forward with our legislative agenda, stories are a big part of this. And so we would like your stories on whatever aspect of our initiative speaks to you the most, whether it's franchise reform, self-distro, licensing fees, brand registration, whatever it might be, that'll help your business. If we can get some recorded snippets of less than a minute to help us in our campaign to push out there to drive our agenda home, you can get in touch with me or Brooke so we can use some of those. The more stories we can tell, the better. And finally, I know I said it earlier, I'll say it again. If you are going to join us for FBG Fest in March, please go sign up, and so we can make sure I've got you included on my list. With that, I am going to turn this over to the illustrious legal bro himself, Josh Aubuchon, who's going to talk about collaborations, because I know that everybody loves doing collaborations, and I just want to make sure everybody's doing them the right way. So, Josh, over to you.
Thank you, Sean, and thanks for asking me to do this. It's funny. We always seem to have plenty of questions popping in, and this was one that seems that you've gotten quite a few on. So I'll be brief, because there's not a whole lot of magic and mystery to working on collaborations and the requirements and things thereof. But I'll also just give some legislative notes and maybe a little background intel for everybody, after we finish collabs, for your information and for your, I guess, kind of knowledge on what we're working on this session. So, the way I kind of got introduced was collaboration beers. I remember, and I've still got the bottle somewhere. There was a bottle between Avery and Russian River, collaboration, not litigation. It was actually over intellectual property rights, and over they had beers the same name. They decided it'd be more fun to do a collaborative beer effort and put something together. And that was like one of the first collaborative beers I ever remember having. This is probably 2004, 2005, and thinking like, wow, that's pretty cool. So in Florida, while the rules and the laws are a little murky still on contract brewing and alternating proprietorships, which we're working to address in our legislation this year, collaboration beers are a little simpler. And truthfully, the way it operates is that if you and another brewery are collaborating, then wherever the beer is being produced is going to be the end all be all of where, what takes place. The taxes are paid. If that brewery, if the collaborator that you're working with has a 3-tier contract already with the distributor, then it would have to go through their distributor, and you're basically, they're going to pay all the taxes and everything else that goes along with it. some of the misconceptions are that because you might own part of it, or that it's a collaborative beer, you could transfer. Now you can definitely take beers away if it's not being sold, but if it's going anywhere into your tap room to be sold, you would unfortunately would have to buy through 3-tier. And the reason for it being was that without conclude, there are so many different ways with ownership can be cut and sliced on the beer. Did you buy the hops, or maybe they bought the grain, or did you put together the recipe? That it's really, for simplistic sake right now, that's the way it needs to work. So unfortunately, we do get a lot of questions about, well, I just brought it over to my brewery. Well, unfortunately, you would have to go through 3-tier unless it's made at your facility. And of course, you would have to, the facility that manufactured the beer would have to then complete the brand registration and make sure that that's on file and in order. A couple things to think, and obviously, if there's any questions, maybe I guess hit the chat box or raise your hand on this. I don't know if can you do that, or is that under? No, that's under.
If go ahead and put it in the chat box, and then we'll relay it to Josh as we go, and we'll try to sort of do them at the end.
Perfect. So a couple things to think about, and intellectual property is one area where I know there's always a lot of questions. For the recipe, and I don't know how, everybody's different. If you've got a recipe that you really want to have and make sure of, then you need to make sure that you've, in any kind of loose agreement you have, that you've secured the intellectual property rights. And typically, if you're registering the brand and you're going through those processes, you're going to have a pretty strong case that you would have the intellectual property for it. I guess an interesting thing to think about is how this is going to be affected with contract brewing, alternating proprietorships, host brewing, and things like that. And here's why it's a little interesting in Florida. So the federal code, the CFR, actually does have this pretty well established, and where the tax implications, who pays the taxes, who makes it. But Florida code, it's unclear. It doesn't outright prohibit anything, but it is just there's a lot of vagueness to the statute, and the rules don't help either. And just going back, so I know everybody probably already knows the rules. They've probably seen our statute sites and links and things like that, which are always vague and horribly written, since most of the statutes were written 100 years ago. But the Florida Administrative Code also has all the rules and things that go along with it. So for instance, brand registration is under 563, but then there's a separate rule that's established by the division under 61A-4.005. And of course, this is something we're going to fix with this year. But going back to contract brewing and alternating proprietorships, what we've done and what we have been working with the division on is crafting some language that's Florida specific, that basically just takes what is already allowed under the federal code and put that into Florida statutes. It was in our bill last year, and there were no issues. There were no concerns raised by either staff or by the division or even the opposition from our distributor friends. So we're pretty optimistic about getting this language through again. It would define 563.042, draw out what contract brewing alternating proprietorships would allow you to do. And it would also permit you to make sure you're transferring in products. So if you've got somebody else that's contract brewing for you, once the taxes are paid and everything else, there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to bring it into your brewery in the same limits that you can bring in under 563.022, which is an amount up to the amount you're producing at the receiving brewery. Legislative notes for it. Just I know I mentioned the intellectual property, and sorry, my light goes out on the brand registration. And I guess I'll just kind of a catch-all. I know there's questions all the time about brand registrations, and it's been rather frustrating because letter of the law actually does say every brand needs to be registered, but AB&T had been a little flexible in saying, well, if it's going out into distribution, you need to make sure that you're paying that amount. But if it's not leaving your tap room, then, registered under other, pay a $0 amount and just have the brand registration completed. We've been very, very adamant about trying to get this fixed legislatively. And while the division has been fairly helpful for trying to get this accomplished, they did say that they needed a statutory change because they, while they understood our position, they can't just ignore what's in the current statute, which is for those playing along 563.045. And so one of the things that we're working on this year is again putting it in so that, you know, if your brand is not being sold to a distributor or to a vendor, there's no annual registration fee. So that you know, if it's never leaving your tap room, there's no point in requiring you to you know, to pay an amount to register it. Now, granted, the division would like to see brands register, but there would be no charge, so that all of these would be able to be done for free. Let's see what else. For those of you that are interested in coming up to Tallahassee, and I see Dave right there from Amelia Island, and guys, I love Dave. Dave has been a frequent flyer in Tallahassee, and you know, I think it's illustrative of coming up here just to see how the process works and to see, you know, what really goes on. And so I would definitely encourage you, if you're even on the fence about it, please come up. If you can't make our dates, as Sean mentioned, February 7th and 8th and March 14th and 15th, if you can't make those, you know, reach out to me, say, hey, I'm coming up. Could you at least help maybe get me in with my member? Would love to do that to help you to go see them. And part of it is educating members. You know, we've got 30 brand new members of the Florida legislature this year. They have no idea what the heck is going on. You know, and they're being inundated with topics like healthcare and affordable housing and tax issues and, you know, tort reform and property insurance. And so usually I would say coming to talk to them about craft beer is kind of a nice little break for them in the day, and usually a meeting they look forward to. And they love hearing from their local constituents. While, you know, I have great relationships with several members, you know, like I've mentioned Representative Robert Brackett, who's actually from Vero Beach, who has a great relationship with Brooke. And he's actually working on several projects for us this year. You know, he's going to want to hear from Brooke more so than me, because, you know, Brooke gets to pull the lever for him in the voting booth. So just keep that in mind as you're maybe weighing in whether or not you can come up, that your story, you're always going to have a much more effective story because you're their constituent, and that puts you in a special category for them. They love to have their constituents come up and visit and brag about it and put it on social media that, hey, these folks from my district came and saw me. Legislative session is, and I'll just give you a brief little overview. Right now, we're in the process of doing committee weeks. It is kind of a build up before session. They meet not every single week, but pretty much every other week. So this week, we're just finishing up and wrapping one of the interim committee weeks. We do not have one scheduled for next week, which is good. But the week of February 6th, the week of February 13th, the week of February 20th, those are all interim committee weeks. So the committees are meeting. They're going over different subject matter topics, but the full legislature is not in session in the sense that they're meeting on the floor and you know, pushing big bills out all the way. The legislative session this year, and it does vary every other year because some years we have it early, some years we have it late. This is one of the later ones. It kicks off on March 7th and it'll go through May 5th. But that's not to say that bills have to be done, you know, just in that time period. We're actually in the process of getting our bills filed and moving, hopefully, in the next couple of weeks. We submitted them a while back to bill drafting, and of course, this is the bureaucratic process where, you know, the nonpartisan staffers at the House and the Senate go through your bill line by line. You know, make sure that there's no missing cross references, or that, you know, it's in the terminology they prefer, whether it's a shall to may, or a may, or you know, just kind of the technical aspects of putting it in bill draft format. And so while we wait on that, you know, we've been working with committee members, we've been working with the Senate President's office and the Speaker's office to kind of get our issues out there, tell them what it is we're looking to do, and you know, kind of clear the path to getting that heard. So I know I've kind of veered off then from collaborations, but just want to see who's got any questions. Is there anything maybe that I didn't think of or didn't address that you'd want to hear about?
We have a question in the chat. From front page. Are there recommendations for how specific to be with taproom only brand registrations? For example, is fruited sour okay, or do I have to register my lime sour, my orange sour, my pineapple sour that are all made from the same batch?
Now that's a great question. So I don't think that AB&T has ever bothered to get that granular with it. I would recommend, to keep it simple, I would just say fruited sour, that you have an alternating, that if you're putting different fruit in, I would keep it simple, for those purposes. Now, and of course, with your base beer, and again, this is a really interesting point, like with treatments and things, they don't necessarily consider it a different brand. Now, of course, if you want to consider a treatment or something else that you've done a different brand for the purposes of putting it out there, as let's say it's Sean's Special Ale or Halsey Bashir's sour, then I would go ahead and register it as a separate brand. And I would definitely, once we get this fixed, with the no payment, just make sure that you're in compliance therein. And I do see another question that's popped up. How does brand registration and colas work with national collabs, distro and non-interstate and in-state? So colas are really only required whenever it is crossing state lines. And if you've got a collaboration with somebody outside the state, then yeah, you're going to have a cola, and you're going to need to do the brand registration in the state. Just like you would any other brand. Any other
questions about anything while you have Josh here in front of you? How do collabs work if you're mixing a cider or mead with beer?
Oh, now that's a good question. It's going to be pretty much the same way. It would still need to be going through 3-tier. Just because of the different product, but you're going to need to register it, so multiple breweries can register the same brand. Yes, absolutely, absolutely can. But collabs with cider and mead with beer, same way. You're going to need to register it just as if it's done that way. And I would check and see, if you, depending on the percentages, and I don't know them off the top of my head, if it exceeds a certain percentage, you're going to need to do. Just to see if you've got a wine registration issue there, but if it's below a certain percentage, I don't think you would need to. It could just be done as like an additive. Is there anything specific or different for a brewery in planning to do a collaboration? So if you're a brewery in planning and you're not licensed, then really your collaboration, it needs to all be complete with the brewery that's doing the work, and that you're at the facility you're doing it. I would be very, very careful about trying to do anything if you do not have a CMB license for registration. I would stay away from it until you are fully licensed, because the way they get you really is if you're selling products. If you're a brewery and planning, like, yeah, you're coming online and everything else, but if you do not have your brewer's notice and your CMB, then I would stay away from that to make sure that there's no improper conduct or perceived sales of a product without a license. So I promise to keep it quick. Any other questions or
any other questions?
Anybody wants to?
So just Josh, as the non-brewer here, I want to see if I can sort of reiterate what you said in the simplest language possible. If you are doing a collaboration with another brewery, essentially, and that, let's say I'm going to use Amelia Island because you guys are at the top of my screen, and Beachfly because you're right next to them. So Amelia Island and Beachfly are doing a collaboration. They do the brew at Amelia Island, but they both want to serve it in their tap rooms. Amelia Island is technically the brewery that made the beer, and if Beachfly wants to serve it in their tap room, they have to get it through 3-tier from Amelia Island through their distributor. Correct?
Yep, that is correct. So I see another question. Well, what's the legislative approach this year? All in one or separate bills? So good question. What it is looking like right now, and I will tell you what we did is I submitted multiple bills to bill drafting. One, to put a marker down, The process works like this. If you don't have a bill in bill drafting by the bill drafting deadline, they're not just going to create one out of thin air. You got to at least have some language that's being reviewed and put into that bill drafting format. So we did through multiple avenues. We've got all the language that we love and want to see passed in multiple bill draft slots. We have been working with our the folks we're talking to about sponsoring the bills, and there's kind of been two schools of thought. There's actually two members that are like, hey, we would love to do this omnibus language. That's some cleanup things, definitions, defining a craft brewery, allowing breweries to do sales and tastings at Florida fairs, trade shows, farmers markets, getting rid of the bond requirement, fixing the brand registration, lowering your licensing fees if you're below 60,000 barrels to $500 a year instead of the 3,000, and then fixing the contract brewing and alternating proprietorship language. So there's two members that are like, yep, we're gung ho. We want to have this. We want to do these. And then I've got a couple other members that are gung ho about push and self distro, and the included franchise piece that we've got in there. And they haven't made a decision one way or the other, like where, are we going to do franchise all together with it, or are we going to just try to push self distro? But there is definitely an appetite for getting that done. And so what I would say based on my current view, my conversations that I've had in the past couple of weeks with legislators, it is probably going to be looking like we have multiple bills. Now they just may decide to merge them, and the ask has been put to the highest levels, both the speaker and to the president, about if we have some limited self-distribution and we can get to a happy place with the distributors on it, is there would be an appetite to merge them together as one bill and just have it as one package to pass. But that would probably come at a later date, maybe after the first committee. And if we can get everybody singing Kumbaya, then it would make sense to put it as one package and just kind of push it out that way. So that's what we're looking at. And again, while we have the best of intentions and say, hey, let's put this all together as one, it's ultimately up to the legislator to decide, what goes in their package and their bill, because, they're the ones pushing the buttons, not us. And I will tell you a real life example of this in other industries. We're working on a pretty robust tort reform package to address a number of things out there to curb excess litigation. And so the speaker essentially said, look, I want to put these 3 or 4 things in a package. These other issues you have, while we like them, they're good, they're going to need to have their own homes. So this is all part and parcel of the process. It's not like we're, what we're doing or what we'd be doing would be anything different. It's just, that's just how they work it. Are there any differences for contract brewing cider being regulated as wine? Yes, that's under its own separate chapter 564. You just need to be sure that when you're doing wine, you're doing it correctly with the AMW license, and that everything's licensed and correctly done the right way. Do you have to name the collaboration beer the same name? You do not. You do not have to name it the same thing. And I real world example, Proof every year does a win-win with First Magnitude, for Florida State, and I believe they change it up depending on where it is. So you do not have to name the beer the same name. Any other questions or anything I might be missing? Email me the bill numbers and sponsors. They're not out yet. They're still being approved and drafting. But when those are out, that will be separate. That will be sent out to the entire guild. John, you're on mute.
Along with that, we will also let you know who's on the important committees that we need to go after, because as you know, it doesn't just come out to the floor and everybody votes on it. It has to go through multiple committees on both the Senate and House side, and those are the people that we need to target first. So question missed earlier about multiple registrations for the same collab.
No, yeah, I mean, you wouldn't need to do, I guess, multiple ones, you know, depending on where, I mean, if it's at multiple breweries, then yes, but, otherwise, if it's made at one place and going out from there, that's like the anchor point, then no, just one registration would work.
Any other questions? While you've got both Josh and I here.
I see 2 thumbs up. Love it. You know, if you guys think of anything, you know, feel free to reach out. You know, we're trying to get to everything as we can, and I'm mostly hovering at the Capitol, so I miss a lot of calls that way by being stuck in meetings. But you know, things are progressing, and it's you know, part of it's always, I'll tell you, so, but you know, part of it's always educating the legislators on our topics, because you know, the 30 brand new folks, you know, some of them have a great knowledge base of the craft beer industry. Some of them have no idea what's going on. And so getting to all those people and talking to them about the issues we see and what's going on is always crucial in getting any legislation passed, because like I said, they're hit with 100 topics a day. And so you know, kind of standing out from the noise is difficult, but it's something we work on every single day. So, Madam President, any final thoughts or any comments?
Yes, you guys are all awesome and you're kicking ass out there. And I couldn't be more proud to hang out with all of you, even if it was just for 30 minutes on a Friday. So go out there and continue to be rock stars.
Excellent. And one other note too, I will tell you guys that AB&T has been pretty fantastic to work with. They did a presentation just a couple weeks ago, like last week in committee, just on the regulatory process. But I spoke with the director and the general counsel, and I invited them and the secretary to come to, and the deputy secretary over the regulations to come to our events. And they've all told me they will be there just to meet with people and be available. And they, you know, they're generally speaking, they just want to help in any way they can, because we're really one of the most drama-free, you know, groups they have to deal with. You know, a lot of them will tell you, even enforcement, they're like, we love going to breweries. It seems like all the T's are always crossed and the I's are always dotted. You know, like we love them. The guys got a great group of folks, and it's fantastic to hear when the regulator tells you we like all of your clients because they're great. So with that, Sean, thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome.
President Brooke, thanks for the opportunity, and all you guys, thanks for joining. And I look forward to seeing you up here in Tallahassee.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good
Bye.
weekend.